The wagon wheels disappeared into the dust before Sarah could draw breath to scream after them. She stood alone on frozen ground, a single trunk at her feet, staring at the weathered cabin that would be her prison. February wind cut through her shawl like knives. Behind her, the valley stretched empty and merciless. Ahead, a man emerged from shadow, tall, worn, with hands scarred by labor and eyes that had forgotten how to trust. Marcus's final words still burned in her ears. "You dishonored the family name. Let the hermit deal with your shame now." Jacob studied her with the wariness of a man who'd learned to expect only trouble from the world. She lifted her chin, refusing to beg. Two wounded animals assessing threat. "I didn't ask for this," he said finally, voice like gravel. "Neither did I." His jaw tightened. "Your family's playing some game I don't understand. But I won't be part of it." Sarah's hands trembled, not from cold, but from rage so fierce it threatened to split her open. They'd thrown her away like spoiled meat. Her husband's family, the people who should have sheltered her grief, had weaponized it instead. Jacob gestured toward the barn without looking at her directly. "Sleep there. I'll decide what this is by morning." She gathered what remained of her dignity, lifted her trunk, and walked toward the barn alone. The door groaned shut behind her. Inside, hay and darkness, and the smell of horses. She arranged a sleeping space with shaking hands, then collapsed onto it. Through gaps in the wood, she could see Jacob standing motionless in his doorway, watching her shadow. Sarah clutched her dead husband's wedding ring, the only thing his family hadn't stripped from her. Her whisper was a vow to the empty air. "I will survive this winter. Then I'll disappear where none of them can find me." She didn't cry. She'd learned that tears changed nothing. The blizzard hit on the fourth day, and Jacob found her collapsed against the barn door, lips blue, consciousness fading. He cursed under his breath, short, sharp words swallowed by howling wind. She'd been too proud to knock, too stubborn to ask for help, even as hypothermia claimed her. He knew that stubbornness. He'd worn it like armor for 6 years. Jacob carried her inside, laid her by the hearth, and forced hot broth between her lips. She resisted weakly, even half frozen, pride nearly stronger than survival instinct. Hours passed. The fire crackled. Wind screamed against the cabin walls. Sarah's color slowly returned, pale to pink, death retreating. When her eyes finally focused, shame and gratitude warred across her face. "Why help me?" Her voice was paper thin. Jacob tended the fire, not looking at her. "Winter doesn't care about our preferences." She pulled the blanket tighter, studying him. The cabin was spare. One room, functional, haunted by dust and deliberate emptiness. A man's space where no softness had been allowed for a long time. "I won't be a burden," she said. "Then don't freeze to death in my barn again." He laid out terms like dealing cards. She'd stay through spring, help with chores, cooking, mending, preparing the garden plot. Come April, she could leave with his horse and enough supplies to reach a new town. Start fresh somewhere her family's shadow couldn't find her. Sarah listened, calculating, not trust, but necessity. "Your family won't take you back," Jacob added. Brutal honesty. "But you'll have a chance somewhere else." "I accept." "Good." That night, Sarah slept on a bedroll near the hearth that Jacob provided without comment. The blizzard raged on, burying the world in white. Inside, two strangers breathed in the same small space, both wondering what survival would cost them. Neither acknowledged the relief of no longer being completely alone. The inciting incident crystallized in that silence: cooperation or death. Spring felt impossibly far away. Sarah found the toy by accident 3 weeks later, reaching for a pot in the back cupboard, a small wooden horse. Carved with surprising delicacy, she held it carefully, transfixed by the detail. Tiny mane, legs mid-gallop, worn smooth by small hands. Jacob entered, saw what she held, and his face went to stone. Long silence. The air grew heavy. "My sons," he said finally. "Fever took him 5 years back. His mother, too." Sarah's throat tightened. She returned the horse to its hiding place with reverence, as if it might shatter. When she spoke, her voice cracked. "My husband died in a mine collapse 2 years ago. His family blamed me. I hadn't given them a grandson first. They said I brought the curse." She looked at Jacob directly. "They sent me here because I'd already been through enough suffering, cruelty dressed as righteousness." Jacob poured coffee with deliberate care, handed her a cup. The first gesture beyond mere necessity. "And you took me in because you understand what it's like," Sarah continued, "to be buried alive by grief." He nodded once. They sat at the small table, both hands wrapped around warm cups, both silent with the weight of ghosts acknowledged. This mutual revelation shifted everything. They couldn't unknow each other's humanity now. Outside, the first signs of thaw, ice dripping from eaves, the sun slightly warmer. Inside, something equally fragile began to melt. That night, Sarah moved her bedroll slightly closer to the common space. Jacob noticed, but said nothing. The barn door stayed closed now. An invisible line had been crossed. The wooden horse sat visible on the shelf, no longer hidden in shadow, later, lying in darkness. Sarah felt the cabin differently. Not prison, not temporary shelter. Something else. Something she didn't have words for yet. Across the room, Jacob stared at the ceiling, thinking the same dangerous thought. What if she stays? Neither slept well. Both wondered what came after survival. Sarah knelt in the dirt, hands deep in soil that smelled of possibility, and realized with shock that she was planting a garden, not just surviving, but building. April arrived with mud season and longer light. Birds returned to the valley. The land wore patches of green like promises. Domestic rhythms formed between them. Sarah mended and organized the neglected cabin, creating order from chaos. Jacob taught her to shoot his rifle. "Wolves and worse," he said simply. She learned quickly, her hand steady on the weapon. Small kindnesses accumulated like interest. She left coffee hot for his dawn rounds. He brought wildflowers one morning, awkward, placing them in a jar. Cabin needed life. One evening, a stubborn chicken escaped and led them on a breathless chase through the yard. They collapsed against the fence, laughing, actually laughing, and the sound was startling in its rarity. For a moment, the weight lifted, then hoofbeats. Tom, their nearest neighbor, arrived with supplies and judgment in his eyes. He nodded to Jacob, barely acknowledged Sarah. "Heard about your arrangement," Tom said, unloading sacks. "Town's talking. People have concerns." Jacob's expression hardened. "People always have concerns about things that aren't their business. Just thought you should know. Marcus has been to town, speaking to folks his family has standing there." After Tom left, the warmth evaporated like morning frost. Sarah stood at the window. "I'm poison to you, too. I should leave before I ruin your life here." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low but firm. I stopped caring what they think a long time ago. Question is, what do you want? She turned, met his eyes. I don't know anymore. That night, Sarah watched Jacob repair fence posts under moonlight, his silhouette patient and determined. She touched her reflection in the window glass, barely recognizing the woman staring back, stronger, more alive. But fear crept in. What if caring for him is the cruelest thing I could do? The thunder came like cannon fire, and Sarah's scream tore Jacob from half-sleep, not fear of the storm, but something deeper, darker. He found her curled tight, trapped in memory, eyes open but seeing another time. Rain hammered the roof. Lightning illuminated her terror in stark flashes. Jacob hesitated, then sat beside her, hand hovering before finally touching her shoulder. Sarah, you're here. You're safe. She clung to him, trembling. Words spilled out. The mine collapse. Her husband's screams echoing up from the earth. The unbearable weight. The silence that followed. 2 years hadn't dulled the edges. Jacob held her, uncertain but compelled. The fever took my family while I was away, he said quietly. Delivering cattle 3 towns over. Came home to fresh graves. Some nights, I still hear my boy calling for me. The storm passed. Dawn found them still talking, about guilt that never quite faded, about ghosts that demanded attention, about the terrifying prospect of loving again when loss had carved out so much. Physical closeness came naturally now, her head against his shoulder, his arm steady around her, not passion, but profound recognition. I feel like I'm betraying Thomas by being happy here, Sarah whispered. Does that fade? No, Jacob said honestly. But you learn to carry both, the grief and the new joy. They can coexist if you let them. Morning light softened everything. They separated awkwardly, unsure how to name what was growing between them. Jacob tended the fire. Sarah made breakfast. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged with unspoken possibilities. That afternoon, working the garden together, their hands brushed, reaching for the same tool. Neither pulled away immediately. The connection was undeniable now, terrifying in its power. Sarah felt her heart opening against her will, and the vulnerability was almost painful. Jacob felt the same, the fear of loving someone who could be ripped away, the exhausting calculation of whether joy was worth the risk of devastation. Neither voiced these thoughts, but both knew everything had changed in that storm-dark night. Sarah saw the dust before the riders, and her blood turned to ice. She knew that silhouette, that posture of righteous fury. Marcus dismounted with 2 hired men flanking him, his face carved from judgment and cold authority. Noon sun blazed overhead, harsh and exposing. "You've shamed us further," Marcus announced, loud enough for his words to carry. "Living as this man's woman. The family voted. You return home. Work our land under proper supervision. You owe us that much." Jacob stepped between them, jaw set. "She owes you nothing. She's free to choose her life. She's family. You're nobody. A hermit playing house with our dead brother's wife." Sarah's voice shook but held. "I choose to stay. You sent me here as punishment, to suffer and disappear. Jacob gave me back my life. I'm not your property. Marcus, I never was." Marcus's face darkened with rage barely contained. "You think this cowboy's going to protect you? He couldn't even protect his own family from God's judgment. Don't you dare!" Sarah stepped forward, fierce despite her fear. "Use his dead child to justify your cruelty. The hired men shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going as Marcus planned. "You'll regret this," Marcus said, voice dropping to something more dangerous. "Both of you. The town will make sure you're driven out, or worse, I'll see to it personally." He mounted his horse with deliberate menace. This isn't over. The riders disappeared into dust, leaving only the echo of threat. Sarah collapsed, weeping, not from fear, but from the enormity of her choice. She'd burned the bridge home forever. No going back now. Jacob held her, kissed her forehead for the first time, gentle, deliberate. "We face it together, whatever comes." But doubt gnawed at both of them as the sun beat down mercilessly. Had love just made them targets? Was choosing each other a death sentence in this unforgiving land? The brick came through the window at midnight with a note tied, "Sinners burn." 2 weeks of escalating harassment followed. Store owner refused them service. Church ladies crossed the street to avoid their shadows. Tom stopped visiting entirely. Whispers followed them like flies. Jacob swept broken glass with mechanical precision, his usual calm cracking. "Maybe I'm selfish. Maybe your family's right. You'd be safer away from me." Sarah's fury ignited. "I'm not a burden you're keeping. I chose this. I chose you. Don't take that choice away from me now." But privately, lying awake while Jacob boarded the broken window, she doubted. What if love wasn't enough against a hostile world? What if her presence destroyed him? That night, she secretly packed her bag. She'd leave at dawn, disappear, spare him further harm. It was the kindest thing she could do. But morning came, and she found Jacob already awake, repairing the window frame with patient determination. His hands worked steadily, no complaint, no surrender, just quiet persistence. She understood then, running would destroy them both. Sarah unpacked. They talked through breakfast, voices low and serious. The plan formed between them like something inevitable. Ride to town together on Sunday. Face the community openly at church. Claim their bond publicly. "If we do this," Jacob said, "there's no going back. It might get ugly." "Good," Sarah replied. "I'm done hiding. They want us to feel shame. I won't give them that, not anymore. Then we stand together. Let them see what real partnership looks like." The days before Sunday felt like preparing for battle, not with weapons, but with resolve. Jacob practiced his words. Sarah stitched a new dress, armor of dignity. The night before, they held each other close in the darkness. No words needed. The dark night of the soul had passed. They'd chosen light together, whatever the cost. Every head turned when Jacob and Sarah entered the church together, hand in hand. And the silence was louder than any condemnation. They walked down the aisle through a gauntlet of stares and whispers. Sat in the back pew. Spring sunshine streamed through windows, warm on their shoulders. Marcus stood during announcements. Voice carrying authority. "This woman dishonors her dead husband and our family name. This man harbors her in sin. It's an affront to God and decency, and this congregation should address it." Jacob rose, heart pounding, but voice steady. "Sarah's family sent her to me as punishment, like discarding broken livestock. They wanted her to suffer and disappear. Instead, we built something honest: work, respect, partnership. She helped me live again after years of just surviving. If that's sin, condemn me. But she stays free." Sarah stood beside him, trembling but clear. I loved my husband. Thomas was good and kind. His death broke me completely, but his family tried to bury me alive with shame and judgment. Jacob gave me back my life, not as charity, but as equals building something together. I choose him. I choose the home we've made. The minister, old and weathered, spoke unexpectedly. Christ forgave the woman at the well. He told those without sin to cast the first stone. Who are we to deny second chances to broken people trying to heal? Some congregants stood and walked out in disgust, but others remained, Tom's wife nodding slightly, the blacksmith staying seated, a widow in the corner with tears in her eyes. Marcus lunged at Jacob with a roar. They collided, brutal, desperate, fists and fury. The sheriff separated them forcibly. Enough, they're free adults on free land. This ends, Marcus, or you answer to the law. Marcus left with murder in his eyes, but legally impotent. Jacob and Sarah exited into bright sunlight, bloodied but unbroken. A few people nodded respectfully. Most averted their eyes. They'd claimed their right to exist together, publicly. The battle wasn't fully won, but they'd stood their ground. Sarah stood in the doorway of their home. She loved that word now, home, watching Jacob mend the fence line, and marveled at how ours had become her favorite word. Late May had painted the land in extravagant green. The garden flourished with vegetables and flowers. 6 weeks since the church confrontation, the town remained divided, but enough people accepted them that they could trade, live, exist without constant threat. They'd married quietly 2 weeks prior with Tom's family and the minister as witnesses, not for validation, but as a true beginning. The child's wooden horse sat openly on the shelf now. Surrounded by wildflowers, Sarah refreshed weekly, honoring the past while building the future. Evening settled golden across the valley. Sarah took Jacob's hand as he came inside, placed it gently on her belly. "We're going to have a baby." His eyes filled with tears, fear and joy warring. "I'm terrified." "So am I. But we'll do it together. We'll teach them that family is who you choose to love, not just blood." They stood together in the doorway at sunset, between the hearth fire behind, warmth, survival, love made tangible, and the land ahead, stretching green and full of possibility. Jacob pulled her close. "You're my treasure. You know that? They meant it as cruelty, sending you here. But you became the greatest gift of my life." Sarah smiled against his shoulder. "We saved each other." That's how real love works, not one rescuing the other, but two broken people building something whole. The sky painted itself in gold and pink, the sun dipping below distant mountains. Behind them, the hearth fire crackled constant and alive. Ahead, the garden stretched toward tomorrow, soil rich with seeds and promise. The wooden horse caught lamplight, a bridge between grief and hope. Sarah thought of the woman who'd arrived here 7 months ago, discarded, half dead inside. Seeing only winter, that woman was gone. In her place stood someone who'd learned the most radical truth. Home isn't a place you're born into. It's something you build with love and choice and stubborn faith in each other. Their story was just beginning.